Have you ever said yes to someone when every part of you is screaming no? And then you spend the next few days silently resenting the person that you said yes to. If this is you, this video is for you. Today, we're going to be talking about the people pleasing identity. It is one of the seven trauma formed identities that we have a tendency to take on as children and live from that place as an adult. If you are just tuning into my channel, welcome. My name is Jennifer Jones. I am a life purpose coach specializing in helping women break toxic cycles and patterns, uproot those survival tools, and give them new ones so they can thrive and walk in their most authentic self. What people don't tell you is that a people pleasing identity is not a behavior alone. It is an identity that you formed as a child for survival. And so I'm going to go into detail today on what that looks like, some of the signs that you can look for if you're operating from this. And I encourage you to get out your piece of paper and a pen and take notes, because what most people don't understand is that they're actually living like from this identity. They're moving throughout the earth. They're anxious, they're tired, and they feel empty. And it's all because they're living from a trauma informed identity. So let's talk about the people pleaser. If you are a person that is tired of saying yes when you have meant to say no, you're meaning to say no, and the surface you've been trying to fix this people pleasing identity by willpower alone, and you don't understand why it's not working, it's because what you fail to realize is that as a child, you believed that in order to be safe within your home or with a group of people that was in your orbit, that you had to please for safety, you had to please to get your needs met, and you had to please for survival. And as an adult, you're realizing that what you learned as a child is not working now. And so, how this shows up in your adult life is that, again, you're saying yes when you mean to say no. Maybe someone's asking you to complete a task at work, and you're tired of them always to asking you to do it because it's adding more to your workload. It's causing you a lot of stress. But because you don't want to be seen as someone that is not agreeable, you say, sure, yes, taking on additional stress in your life, right? And so that's why you're probably exhausted. Or maybe it's a spouse that's constantly asking you to do something that you've just been saying yes to just to people please, but you actually really hate it. And you are afraid to object because you don't want to rock the boat, right? Those are signs of people pleasing. A family member, maybe you're showing up for your mom or your dad, and you always want to be seen as the good child, right? Or the good girl, the good daughter. And you're afraid of saying no because of what they might think of you, all the while denying your authentic truth. That is a form of people pleasing. So you have made that your identity. And until you get to the root of uprooting that false identity you've been wearing, willpower alone is not going to break the cycle and the patterns of people pleasing. So what you have a tendency to believe as a child, okay, is that your value is in how useful you are to others, right? That you are only valued, valuable, remembered if you are useful to others. But what happens with that is that if you are not setting healthy boundaries or even showing up as your authentic self and you're living from a fake identity, it starts living in your subconsciousness and it starts living in your body, and you're trying to figure out, why are you so tired? Why are you irritated? Why are you silently frustrated? It's because you are not setting healthy boundaries. You're afraid to. So let's talk about where this comes in. And if you've been following along from my TikToks and my Instagram, I talk about the seven fractured identities. And today we'll be diving in about the people pleasing. But from in utero, it's studies show that in utero, ages like you're being conceived and formed and cooked in your mother's womb up until the age of 7, your subconscious mind is forming. And the majority of your subconscious mind is fully formed by the age of 7. So, whatever happened to you, whether good, bad, or indifferent, right? Whether it was rejection in the womb, maybe you coming into this world caught your family off guard and they weren't prepared for you. So, you in the womb, you were sensing that you're not supposed to be here or you're not welcomed, right? It can happen then. Or maybe you had a traumatic birth. Studies have shown that trauma can be starting in the womb, even in labor and delivery. A cesarean is very traumatic for a child, right? So what your subconscious mind is learning is that um, you're in a form you're taking on the root of rejection. Let's just say you grew up in a verbally abusive home, physically abusive home, emotionally abusive, maybe you had a chaotic sibling, and in order to keep the peace, you wanted to start people pleasing. All of this is training your subconscious mind on how to give love and how to receive love, right? For safety. So this became your survival identity in order to move about the world. So by age 7, your subconscious mind is 95% fully formed. Now, what people don't understand is that we move around and about the world from our subconscious mind. So whatever your brain, your little brain took in as truth is now that programming. It's showing up for every decision you make, how you interact with your spouse, how you interact with your family, how do you interact at work, how do you show up in friendships, right? From that childlike mindset. And we live 5% from our conscious mind, 95% from the subconscious. So I really want you to hone in on these numbers, okay? So Dr. Bruce Lipton, the author of The Biology of Belief, it says 95% of your behavior is driven by your subconscious mind, programmed by the age of 7. So somewhere in those years, you learned a rule. Maybe a parent was overwhelmed. Maybe a parent was unpredictable. Maybe love was withdrawn when you were not good, right? Maybe your nervous system started doing the math and calculating, I don't like how this feels, so I'm going to morph into this identity. Could be a people pleasing identity for safety. Maybe you learned that love was conditional. And so that from that day forward, your subconscious was saying, this is how I need to be. This is how I need to show up. So if people pleasing, it might look like for you, you have to earn love. You're always anticipating. You're hyper vigilant, right? You're kind of suspicious. You're always adjusting yourself for others. You're really good at reading rooms and reading tones and facial expressions. You're actually very sensitive in a beautiful way. And then maybe for people pleasing, you learn that disappearing was safety. If you shrunk yourself, then you were safe, right? And you've been running your life from this identity, living your life from this identity for so long. But what people don't talk about that it's actually silently ruining your life, right? Um, your body is holding resentment. And if you don't release the resentment that you have towards others, maybe from the resentment came in from people pleasing and always being the good girl and the good boy and always showing up, right? You call it humility, but it's actually people pleasing. If you don't release that silent resentment you have towards others, then it actually can cause disease in your body. A book I always recommend, it's a very dense book to read, but it's called The Body Keeps the Score. And there's tons of case studies of if PTSD, CPTSD, rejection and abandonment is not dealt with, unforgiveness, a traumatic situation, it can actually form cancers in your cells, cancers in your body, right? Autoimmune diseases. Your nervous system has been living in this false identity, which is actually a trauma response identity for so long that it starts to break down after decades of living this way. It's not healthy, right? So I definitely I do a lot of work also on the mother and father wounds and how maybe something that your parents were not able to give you as a child can add to the trauma formed identity. But this is not about blaming your parents. I just want to add that caveat. Um, but it's just being aware of the things that were communicated to your subconscious mind, that living from that place is unhealthy. You're realizing you did that to survive. I realized I shrunk myself and I stayed small so I wouldn't get beat, right? And so it's good to get to the root as to when you begin to live from this trauma informed identity, so then you can go start realizing those are old tools that are not healthy. I'm safe now. Who am I? Right? What do I like to do? I'm safe. I'm lovable. I don't have to work and earn and people please and overachieve for love. I don't have to mask myself for love. I don't have to shrink myself in order to be accepted, right? I can take up space. So let's talk about um uh and really before I go a little bit further, I do want to say the work that I do when I talk about trauma, I'm not having you go back to the actual memory of the trauma because I know that's really hard. And I'm a coach, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor. I mentor and I've been coaching women for years, and I've actually had to do the work. And because I had a lot of compacted trauma, physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, um, and some other abuse I can't really say on YouTube. When I would go through therapy and counseling sessions, it would be very painful. If I didn't have the right person, I remember one time I went to a session and it was a woman that was under an LFMT, but she was training still, right? Gaining more hours. And I remember she opened me up. And because the session it took her a long time to open me up, but by the time she opened me up, the session ended. She never closed me back up, taking me back to that trauma. And I was in my car for about 3 hours, unconsolable. I couldn't drive. I was having panic attacks, hyperventilating. I didn't know what was happening to me. And so I just want to say the work I do is not taking you back to that memory, right? That's not always the healthiest thing in my opinion. But it is taking you back to the time frame of when you first believed, right, that you're not safe, that you first believed that you're not lovable unless you do this, that you are not valued unless you do this, that you are not enough unless you do this, that you got to earn your place in the world if you mask yourself, right? So that's the work that I do. So we're not tracing the intent, but we are tracing when the imprint first happened. Okay. So let's talk about the seven signs. Some of them are seven, they can be more. But again, these are not personality traits, these are trauma informed identities. And statistics show that 70% of adults in this world are walking around living life today from a trauma informed identity. The seven fractured identities are people pleasing, performance, the victim identity, the control identity, the masked identity. You're a chameleon. You're never your authentic self. Lack of vulnerability, the self abandonment fractured identity, meaning putting everybody first before your own needs, so much so you don't even know what you like, you don't know who you are, and then the self validation, the validation seeking identity, right? You need to be affirmed. It's hard for you to have your own mind. You need to be encouraged and built up, right? And so these are identity markers. And so if any of that resonated with you, I just want you to take a minute to see if any of that has landed in your body somehow, right? And you know that you struggle with people pleasing because you've had conversations with yourself to say, I'm tired of this. Why do people feel like they can take advantage of me? What boundary am I not putting up to protect me? Why do I feel so exhausted in friendships and relationships? Why do I feel like I give so much but not get anything back? Why am I silently frustrating? Being silently frustrated by the things I give. I want to give to people. I love people, but I still feel so depleted when I do so. That was me. That was very much me. And um, let's talk about the first sign. You say yes when you mean to say no. It's almost like it comes out so quickly you can't catch it, right? I remember when I started doing this work personally for myself. Again, I've coached and counseled women for years. Um, and I'm a born again believer. That's part of my ministry. But when my body started breaking down, physically breaking down, in and out of the hospital, thinking that I was having a stroke, becoming very lethargic, could not get off my couch. My central nervous system was like, Jennifer, we cannot live this way. And so when I started setting boundaries and really saying no, it shuddered through my body. I felt like I was disappointing not only myself, but the person. It was so foreign to me because I had found my identity in saying yes to people. And what would happen is because I showed up that way, people would treat me the way that I was showing them how I wanted to be treated. Right. So, and so I would be like, why does everyone keep taking advantage of me? And it's like, I'm telling people to take advantage of me because I lack boundaries. Okay. People will treat you the way that you show them and also how they see you treat yourself. So you say yes when you mean to say no, then resent the person, right? You apologize for things that are not your fault. I overly apologize. I was constantly getting disciplined. I mean, I would make like the most innocent mistakes. I was about to say the dumbest mistakes, but I stopped myself because when you're a child, you're going to fall. When you're a child, you're going to lose a paper. You're going to forget your house keys. Okay. You're going to spill milk at the table. Okay. You're a child. You're going to make mistakes. And then as an adult, you're going to make mistakes. Right. But what happened is that instead of having parents that were like, oh, honey, it's okay, or you make mistakes and you're not your mistakes, the transaction was physical violence. Okay. So, how did this show up for me in my teen years and even into my adult years? I'm constantly apologizing for everything because I don't want to be yelled at. Make a mistake at work. I have a top corporate job. I'm making over six figures a year. And someone confronts me on something, and I immediately shrink back to the 4-year old Jennifer who spilled milk on the table and got really in trouble for that. What you made, you're, it's okay to make mistakes. So everything was very high stakes for me. When you're a people pleaser, saying no is very high stakes for you because you don't want conflict. Okay. Because if you were physically abused or disciplined harshly or had a very critical parent at home where you were constantly being corrected, it burned in your subconscious brain that mistakes equal defeat and death, conflict, violence, all of that. So a sign that you could be struggling with people pleasing is, you're apologizing for things that are not your fault. You're over apologizing just to keep the peace, right? Sometimes before anyone else accuses you of everything, you're immediately like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, so sorry. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I didn't call you back. I'm sorry I was away from my phone. People are away from their phone. It's okay, right? You don't want to disappoint anybody. That is your high stakes. Because if you disappoint anyone, that means either physical violence, emotional abuse. You get what I'm saying? So that's where the trauma formed identity of people pleasing. Again, it's not a behavior, it's an identity. Maybe three, you monitor every mood in the room. That was me. Excuse me, very hyper vigilant. I could read people looking for safety because I'm coming in already tight, already stressed, right? Versus I feel safe. Okay. This is called hypervigilance. Like I said, it is the same state that actually combat veterans live in. So that is what happened to my body. I had been living in such a state of hypervigilance my whole 43 years on the earth. I'm 45 now. That um, relaxing or trusting that I'm safe felt very chaotic for me. Okay. And my body was like, also, Jennifer, we can't live in this chaos anymore. So again, I had so many health issues, and I'll explain that in another video, but your body keeps the score and it will tell you everything you need to know. Your doctors might be prescribing you something, but I'm a big believer is get to the root. Do you have unforgiveness? Do you have resentment? Are you holding stress within your cells that is remembering? Right? Are you in a stressful work situation where you can't go to sleep? It's going to manifest in your body. Sign number 4, you cannot receive a compliment. This was me. This was me. I was very suspicious of compliments. I was very suspicious of encouragement. And the way that it sounded to me was either manipulation, that someone was trying to manipulate me, or that it wasn't true. They were about to bring a form of correction because I grew up in a very critical home. And so to my brain, it's like, I won't even hear it. I'll be like this. "Eh, okay, so I'm waiting for you to tell me." And then if they didn't say anything negative, like, "Jennifer, I like this about you, but this, and this," then what would my mind do for the next 24, 48, 72, 96 hours? Discredit the compliment and magnify the thing that they should have actually been saying. So I'm picking myself apart, right? You deflect, you minimize, you give credit away. That was me. It was really hard for me to take credit. And even when I started doing the work and sitting in the compliment and sitting in the credit and not trying to one up somebody and go, oh, thank you. But I really need to work on this. Just take the compliment, right? So then when I started doing the work, I would have to sit in it and go, thank you. Thank you. And not, first it was thank you. And then I would minimize myself and immediately tell you my flaws. Or I would say, then learn, thank you. Shh, just receive it. When I say all this craziness started happening in my body was like, inside was fighting, you're a fraud, you're an imposter. You're a liar because there's this that you can tell them why something's wrong with you. Okay. Number five, you conflict feels like a five-alarm emergency. That was 1,000,000% me. Okay. Because I grew up with an abusive father, physically abusive, verbally abusive, and emotionally abusive dad, emotionally unavailable mom. But also she was very critical because she was very critical of herself, right? Um, and a lot of physical violence. I mean, my dad would go 0 to 60 real quick. Someone didn't say hi to him in a certain way and he'd go, "Rah," go off. What do you mean? Very emotional. But then when he was a good dad, he was a really great dad. So I never knew who I was getting. And then with my mom, I'd make a mistake and it was like, why are we getting beat for the mistakes? I forgetting the house keys, just really interesting things. So conflict, so what that did for me as a people pleaser identity is I was very passive aggressive. I would not confront. When it came time for confrontation, oh my goodness, you would have thought that I was turning myself in to the police for a crime I committed. That's how much anxiety would run through my body. It would feel like a five-alarm fire because I would think, oh, the friendship's over. I have to confront, or they wanted to have a talk with me. That means the friendship's over. No, healthy confrontation produces growth, right? Doesn't mean the person's falling out of love with you. Doesn't mean that you are the scum of the earth or the bottom of someone's shoe because you made a mistake or there was a misunderstanding. But that's how it felt. It felt like a five-alarm emergency. So I kept sacrificing my needs every time I wouldn't confront. I would call it peacekeeping. My body would call it survival, but I was denying showing up as my authentic self and setting healthy boundaries and ended up tolerating more toxicity than living and walking free. Sign number six, your worth is built on being needed, right? Because if people aren't reaching out to you for help or pulling on you, you found your identity in being needed. So when they don't do it, you fall apart. You don't know who you are. Is this you? When someone is displeased with you, the floor falls out from you. That was me because I dealt with so much shame growing up. I had so much shame because I would be getting abused, right? And so instead of going, oh, this is okay, or having mercy and grace, that was my subconscious mind took it as, and the truth actually was the physical abuse, but that I'm guilty. I am shame. I had a shame based identity, a guilt focused identity. Okay. Sign number seven, you are walking in the people-pleasing identity, which was built in trauma. You do not know what you want. That was me. People would ask me questions, and to keep the peace and read them and study them, I would say what I felt like they needed me to say. And let's just say I stood on my own 2 feet and said, okay, this is what I want. And then they objected or made a face, and I'd be like, oh, no, 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 but whatever you want to do. What does that mean? Um, Maybe because you spent so long figuring out what everyone else needs, you don't know who you are. So when it would come, Jennifer, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? What do you want to eat? I don't know. What do you want to eat? Where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to go? Jennifer, what's your hobbies? I don't know. What is your hobby? You know? And even when I started doing the work, people would be like, well, what do you like to do? Honestly, I just like to go on long walks with my dog. Not even long walks. I live near a mall. So I like to go outside with her. I like to journal. I like to read. I like to dance. But I remember it'd be so hard for me to say these are my hobbies. This is what I like to do. What's your favorite food? I didn't have a favorite food. I had several different foods, right? It was hard for me to just own a statement and not back away from that. So if that is you, so these are some signs, right? I said seven, but I'm sure there's more. But if this is landing with you, I want you to know that this is not only running your life, this people pleasing identity is not only running your life, but it is ruining your life. Because if you keep living this way, your body is going to start breaking down like mine did. Mine did. Okay. Autoimmune. Um, Felt like I was having a stroke, going to the ER, going to urgent care, migraines. I don't even get migraines, okay? My cortisol levels were all over the place. I was, thank God my blood pressure was fine, but it didn't feel like that, right? Because I was living, my body was like, no more, abort, abort, abort. And so when I began to do the work, there was about 4 months I couldn't get off my couch. I was holding on. I was living in a fight flight response for so long. I had so much compacted CPTSD and PTSD that I ended up having short term memory loss for 9 months. And it was scary. It was hard for me. My speech was slow. I would forget people's names. I would forget what I was saying. I would forget why I walked into the room. Would forget what I was doing for the day. I'd forget so many things. And it felt like I was moving through quicksand. This is what happens to your body when you've been living this way for so long. And so might say, Jennifer, I'm not there yet. I'm telling you right now, you might not be there yet. And I hope that you start doing something different today to break out of that. But eventually it will catch up to you. Okay. So again, this is not a character flaw. People pleasing is not a character flaw. It's not a personality trait. You have made it your identity. And it has been a survival strategy that maybe worked for you as a child out of your subconscious mind that was fully programmed by the age of 7, but it is not working out for you now. Maybe you have been in a consistent pattern of toxic relationships. For me, mine was toxic work environments, toxic board positions, toxic, same personality, same situation, different. It would show up differently. But the problem was I was attracting toxicity due to lack of boundaries and self-worth, right? When you struggle with people pleasing, it's poor self-worth. You're rejecting yourself, okay? So I just want to share why just saying no does not work for you. And this is how my coaching is different. Most coaches, authors will say, just set a boundary, just tell them no. But what they don't talk about is when you've been people pleasing for so long, you don't even know how to use your voice. You don't even know why you do what you do, right? This is how I've been my whole life. You feel like it's your whole life, right? So it's not just about saying no. And it's not about the willpower. There is a wound that needs to be healed, right? And so the wound is in 95% of your brain. The wound is in your subconsciousness, right? So telling a people pleaser to just say no is like telling someone with a broken leg, literally just walk it off. your leg is broken, your femur is snapped. Just walk it off. Everything's going to be okay. No, the trauma formed a wound. The wound, you haven't done the work to close the wound. So what happens is you keep showing up in the places that are reinforcing the wound. And then you're like, well, maybe this is just my identity. And it's like, it's no, right? So, if any of this resonated with you, because there's a part two that's on the next video, and I'm going to give you some tools on how to, like a tool or two, what you can do next time to start living from that place. But I just wanted to give you information about what people pleasing identity looks like. But if any of this resonates with you or resonated, I encourage you to share with us in the chat what you struggle with, how it shows up in your life, and what's the one thing you feel like you need to do to start breaking the pattern. And again, it's more than just saying no, right? Because the way you show up in the world, even if you're saying no, you're still subconsciously attracting these things and you're still not treating yourself right. Okay. And so people will treat you the way that you are telling them to be treated, showing them that you should be treated. So we need to do a little bit more work and excavating um, on how to set the healthier boundary, right? And what that looks like for you. Because you need to start reprogramming your subconscious mind. And that's something that I talk about, in my work. If you want to know more about me, you can click the description notes. You can go to my website, therenewedsoul.co. I'm also on TikTok. I go live on TikTok almost nightly and talk about the fractured identities. I also have a few digital products that you can take away and start learning more about the trauma formed identities. I also have a free trauma informed identity assessment that you can download at no cost to you to take the test to see if you struggle with one trauma formed identity or as for me, I struggled with all seven at different parts of my life and the majority of my life, right? And it wasn't until I hit rock bottom, could not get off my couch, gained 45 pounds, cortisol all over the place, slowly like dying, right? A slow death because I wasn't walking in my authentic self. That was when I had the breakthrough of understanding patterns and doing an assessment over my life as why do I keep showing up as this Jennifer? Why can't I take up space? Why do I shrink myself? Right. And so when I started doing this work and excavating all of these old mindsets and patterns and understand about how trauma does to your body and to your brain and how we live from our subconscious mind and how we need to reprogram our subconscious mind and with new ones, that's when my life started changing. So as a business owner, as a successful business owner and a coach, I want to help you do the same thing. So if any of this, what I said resonated with you, click the description notes for more information. I would love to continue the conversation with you. Take care.